Alrighty, you guys, so this is going to surprise you, but I don't know anything about Wicked, or at least I didn't know anything about Wicked before sitting down at my press screening. I knew it had to do something with the prequel to The Wizard of Oz, so I want to know something. Is it Glinda or is it Glinda? Like, what are we rocking with? Do fans like Glinda or is it Glinda? I need to know. What's going on, you guys? James here with another real review, and I know I've been hyping up this review a little bit on social media, saying that my opinion might not be popular. Does anyone see what I did there? But trust me, this movie's not bad, okay? I just don't think I'm as blown away as a lot of other fans will be. But we're going to get all into my positives, negatives, why I even feel this way, my overall thoughts. But before we do that, if it is your first time here at the channel, welcome to Real James, where we talk about a lot of movies like today. And if you like that, hit the big red button below, subscribe to the channel, tap on that bell, and like this video, you guys. And get loud in the comments below and let me know what you thought about my review of Wicked. Did you like it? Did you not enjoy me not being over the moon about it, or are you actually cautiously optimistic yourself? And like I said, I've never seen the musical. I know nothing about the novel, so please don't spoil anything in the comments for part 2, because this is part 1 of part 2, at least the movie musical. So if you are going to spoil something, just go ahead and use the spoiler tag. I just want to go in as blind as I can for part 2, because I've been told by a friend of mine in this critic space, Kristen Maldonado. She said, "You're not ready for what's happening in part 2. I'm excited for you." And I thought, oh boy, here we go. All right, but I digress. It's time to get into what Wicked is all about. If you're unfamiliar like I am, let's dive into it. Now, the film releases on November 22nd, so a huge shout out to Universal Pictures for giving me the chance to watch this early for review. Wicked Part 1 is directed by Jon M Chu, who also directed Crazy Rich Asians and In the Heights, 2 movies that I really like. And the movie stars Cynthia Erivo as Elphaba, or Elfie, and Ariana Grande as Glinda, or Glinda. I'm still trying to figure that out. We also have the wonderful Michelle Yeoh as Madame Morrible, who is horrible, get it, and Jonathan Bailey, who plays the Prince Fiyero. He is a prince, right? Alright, I just don't want to get crucified here by the fans. But the movie's premise is pretty simple to understand, to be honest. It's the character development that makes this such an adored musical, which is why I'm sure a lot of people are excited to see it on the big screen. Wicked Part 1 introduces the story of Elphaba and Glinda, 2 people with complete opposite lives, before their paths cross at Shiz University. Elphaba is a misunderstood woman, largely because of her green skin, so people prejudge her. There's a lot of social commentary that goes into that as well, which I like the subtle hints at that here in the movie. But Glinda is the popular girl. However, they both somehow find themselves together at one point in their lives after, well, they have a similar encounter with the Wizard of Oz, but it kind of puts a little bit of a fork in the road for their friendship. Now, I won't actually get into more than that, because some of the stuff here you might be surprised at, but if you're like 99% of the people that are watching this movie, you already know what happens. So let's waste no more time and get right into my positives for Wicked. Now, I'm super excited to bring you my perspective because, again, I did not read the 1995 novel by, I believe the author's name is Gregory Maguire, and I never saw the play, which was developed by Stephen Schwartz. Now, I have been listening to the cast recording, at least the first half of it, because I don't want to spoil anything in the second half. And, dude, the original cast recording is great. And I'm so happy to say that Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande's chemistry and their casting was pretty perfect. They both play off one another very well in this film. And there's genuinely a friendship that's eventually built in the movie that you can almost believe even happened off screen. Their junket interviews have been excellent together, so just a lot of what's been going on maybe off camera just really translated to the big screen, so huge kudos to both of them. And as you all know, Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo have incredible vocal talent, and in Wicked, their range is put on full display, and I actually was floored because I don't know if I've ever heard them sing better than in this movie. It's crazy. I love their musical numbers individually, but together, you just understand how much of a powerhouse they are. And I just love exactly how everything was filmed in those sequences. They both kind of got their own shine, but together, again, it's just a duo that's simply breathtaking at times. I also found it really cool that Ariana Grande was surprisingly very funny in this movie. I mean, of course, she's an actress and she's been one for a while now. Y'all remember her on Nickelodeon. So it's really cool to see that she's evolved into a huge pop artist, but she still has those roots, right? And her comedic timing is pretty excellent. I was surprised at how funny this movie is, and I was told that the book is actually not so funny, so it's a little bit more tragic, it sounds like. But the comedic timing here by Ariana Grande was awesome. But for me, Cynthia Erivo gave the best performance in the film simply because, one, her character is just ripe for lots of layers. Two, the emotional complexity of her character was just perfectly translated by Cynthia Erivo. And three, I don't know, I just really like Elphaba in this movie. I just really, in a way, sympathize with her character on a lot of levels. And yeah, maybe I'm wearing green on purpose now that I think about it. But I really enjoyed her performance the most. But Ariana Grande, gosh, just such a great performance as well. So both of them A+. But what about the supporting cast? Because this is a huge ensemble, you guys. We got names like Michelle, Yeoh, Jonathan Bailey, and even Jeff Goldblum. Yeah. So for me, Michelle Yeoh as Madame Morrible is a really good casting decision. Now, she has like one musical number, I believe, in this, and wasn't as great, but I will be honest with you, the character itself is just, there's a turn here that I was really impressed by, and I almost like silently clapped, but I know the crowd probably was not a fan of Madame Morrible in the play, and they're like, how dare you, in the movie. But for me, Michelle Yeoh did a good job. Jeff Goldblum is barely in the movie, but when he is, he's Jeff Goldblum. So if you like Jeff Goldblum, you'll love him here. We'll talk about Jonathan Bailey later. But hey, we're not in the negatives yet, you guys. So let's keep going with the positives, because man, oh man, were there some colorful musical numbers here, excellent set design, and strong choreography. Now, the musical numbers, for the most part, were pretty good. I mean, there were some hit and misses along the way, but my favorites are apparently the most popular musical numbers in the movie, Defying Gravity and Popular. Man, let me tell you, Cynthia Erivo, she floored me with her performance of Defying Gravity. I was like, yo, are we watching this in 40x? Because I felt like a rush of wind come off the screen when she belted out that last note. Y'all know what note I'm talking about. And then with Popular, it was just Ariana Grande being really good at what she does on screen. She was so animated, and it was a really fun scene between her and Elphaba. So I really enjoyed Glinda and Elphaba. Just, again, those musical numbers where they're like playing together on screen. But the sets, like Jon M Chu and everyone involved, my goodness, the way that they were able to light up this world. I mean, I really liked the world building in the first act. And it was due in large part to the set designs feeling so real. And of course, there's VFX, which for the most part looked pretty good. But the movie did not get the credit it deserved in the trailer. So if you watched the trailer and thought, oh, gosh, that looks ugly, you'd be right. But in the movie, it's totally the opposite. So it looked really beautiful on screen, to be honest with you. And I loved how alive everything was in the background. And hey, I gotta give credit to the choreography by Christopher Scott, because nobody was ever not doing something in this movie. I mean, there's a lot of reactions from characters in the background. There's, you know, Glinda's posse that's always got a slick comment to make. And I thought there was a lot of good being done in the choreography department. It was just so fun to watch. Even the worst musical numbers in this movie, in my opinion, were still okay because of the choreography. Now, there's one more thing I want to talk about, and that is Jon M Chu's strong direction. Wait, did I say one more thing? Wait, no, we got a couple more. So, Jon M Chu is just such a good director, and I've liked him for a while now. But I think he's going to become a household name for audiences that are either fans of Wicked or non-fans. When you see this movie, you're going to say, oh, all right, this dude knows how to direct, and he does a great job here. There's a lot of great visual storytelling that he employs in this movie too, where it begins on a very colorful note, of course. I like the chronological order of events too. It begins with the end. As funny as that sounds, you guys probably know what I'm talking about if you're fans of the Broadway musical. Now, the visual storytelling, though, starts off very colorful, and then eventually it gets darker. And I'm told that part 2 is going to be pretty dark, so it makes sense. But I love that little cue there, and it lets you know story's taking a turn. So lastly, in this section for my positives, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the third act. It's one of the strongest of 2024. Now, sometimes movies can be made or broken based on how they end. And man, oh man, did Wicked end on a high note. And that was not a music pun. I'm serious. The minute Defying Gravity comes in, this movie just switches into another gear. And I think the movie needed this because, well, I'll talk about that more in just a little bit in my negatives. But the VFX was on full display in the third act. You had Cynthia Erivo doing a great job, and also Ariana Grande just, you really understood the struggle with her character. And I know that's funny to say because she's the it girl. What could she possibly struggle with? She's rich. However, there was a struggle. Elphaba's my friend, and then the alternate, which I'm not going to tell you in case you are like me and didn't really know anything about this movie going into it prior. But I just really loved how Oz looked, and then the third act sets up for what I hope is a good part 2 because, man, this movie ended on such a strong note that it basically saved the film for me. And you're thinking, whoa, let me light this torch and get this pitchfork and come after James. Don't do that, okay? Put the broom down. I will say, this movie's not flawless, right? So now let's get into my negatives here, and let's talk about why Wicked is good, but just not great. Now, I'm talking about part 1, so not all of it. So I understand that part 2 could save part 1 in a greater regard for me, and in my mind think, wow, retroactively, this movie's really good. However, I'm judging part 1 on its own right now. And I have to say, while the world building was really cool in the first act like we talked about, and the third act is really strong, it's the middle of this movie where it struggles the most. There's all sorts of pacing issues for me, where the story sort of goes nowhere and lingers in areas where I didn't think it needed to linger, almost as if maybe they're milking it and drawing it out because they know it's part 1. It's okay sometimes to basically meander on certain subjects if I feel like characters are being developed, but there's plenty of moments in the middle of this movie where I just sort of felt the story wasn't going anywhere. Like, hurry up, let's get to the next story beat, because in the third act, finally, character development again. But the second act, there was just a little too much back and forth between areas in which I thought they were going to go in, and then you had storylines and plots that just felt underwritten to me and just half-baked. Like, there's this storyline with the animals where Elphaba somehow becomes an animal lover, and I'm like, okay, where did this come from? And then you also have a storyline between Prince Fiyero and Elphaba where I thought, okay, this was a surprise turn that didn't really fit for me either, and you didn't linger on enough for it to feel very real. So I just didn't love a lot of the setup in the second act. Now, again, I could be wrong in part 2. They could prove me wrong and say, you know what, James, it was all worth it. And hey, I'll eat crow on that. But for right now, the second act literally almost sunk this movie for me. If it wasn't for the third act, man, I genuinely think this movie would have been towards the middle to bottom tier for 2024. That's how, in my opinion, how sloppy the second act was. Now, is it all bad in the second act? No. But a lot of the weak points of this movie are on full display in the middle. Just like some of the musical numbers. Now, of course, my favorites are Defying Gravity and Popular, like we talked about. I still like The Wizard and I thought at the very beginning, No One Mourns the Wicked, I think is what it's called. It's pretty good, but in the middle. I'm talking about the middle right now. Prince Fiyero's, dance, I don't care about anything. My life is, I'm just rich, royalty. I did not like that number at all. And I'm not going to lie. I think Jonathan Bailey had one of the weaker performances in this movie. It felt muted, knowing that he could deliver a decent performance like we saw in Bridgerton versus in Wicked, where to me it just never resonated, and I thought that quite possibly he didn't do much to stand out. Maybe that's his character, and you guys can tell me in the comments if I'm wrong. But Prince Fiyero was such a weak character in this movie, and I thought that his performance wasn't anything to write home about. So his musical number was bad, the rocky pacing, and I thought that they lingered too long on storylines that didn't really matter. If anything, they probably needed to get to the third act a lot quicker. And I get it. This movie's 2 hours and 40 minutes. So they needed to stretch something out, and I was afraid of that. And they kind of did in the middle of the movie. So that's where I felt the movie was at its weakest. And I really was hoping for a little bit more from the overall experience. But I felt like maybe because I don't have that context with the play and the book, the novel, I should say, maybe that's why the movie didn't hit for me. But there are a lot of fan moments. Sometimes it's a little on the nose, but I'm going to be honest. For the fans, they loved it in the theater. They were laughing at our screening, and they were crying, and then they were clapping, and I don't know. It didn't really add anything to the movie, but there were some clear references, and I thought, okay, we get it, but it's for the fans at the end of the day, right? So, of course, they're going to love it, but for me, as someone who's not a mega fan or a fan at all before this, I thought, okay, stop pandering to a certain crowd. But for the most part, it was fine. And I wanted a little bit more, and I think that's where my disappointment came from, was that there was a ripe section right in the middle, man, and they just could not execute properly. So that's what dragged the movie down the most. But with all that being said, my final thoughts are on Wicked. Guys, if you're a fan of movie musicals, this is probably going to blow you away. But if you're looking for a little bit more from the character development side of things, and maybe you were hoping they would get a little bit darker quicker in terms of exploring Elphaba's past and her current situation, you might not feel that in this movie. So Wicked Part 1 is a good, solid start to this 2-part experience. I'm hoping Part 2 can really take it home, because that third act, again, was unreal, okay? There were some awesome musical numbers here. I liked the direction for the most part, and the performances by our leads were amazing. Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande, man, talented individuals, but on the big screen together, they truly can lift any movie, and they really did so in Wicked. And I loved what they delivered. I just wish the overall experience was a little bit more refined, but again, that's just me. So if I had to even rate this movie, I'm stuck, y'all. I'm stuck between a 3.5 and a 4 out of 5. I think I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5, simply because it is visually very astounding. There's some good performances here. There's great musical numbers. Of course, there's that middle section that I didn't really like, and it hurt the movie quite a bit for me. But it's a 4 out of 5, on the lower side of things, of course. So I think you guys are going to love it, and if you're a fan, you're going to love it. I just wish I could maybe take away a little bit more from this movie. So there you have it, you guys. That's my real review of Wicked Part 1. If you like this, hit the big red button below, subscribe to the channel, and let me know what you think about my thoughts in the comments below. And I got to know, when you see the movie, what would you rate this? If you're a fan of the musical, how does it hold up to your standards and your expectations? Were they met? Or did they just miss the standard you wish that the movie reached? Because movie musicals are tough, I get it, but Jon M Chu proves he could do a good job, especially within the Heights, and now with Wicked Part 1. So there you have it, guys. That's all I got for y'all, okay? I'm tired because I've just been singing the song that's been stuck in my head, the popular song. But y'all, I gotta go watch more movies this week and through the rest of the year. So again, stay tuned. Thanks so much for tuning in to this review. I love y'all. God bless you guys, and I'll catch you at the next screening.